In the first part of theory lesson number 7, we saw how composers wrote notes and rests on scores representing different lengths of time for which they are to be held. Let's take a quick look at what those look like. A whole note is just simply a circle that's empty in the center. A half note has a stem attached to it. The quarter note looks like the half note, except the center is filled in. An eighth note going all the way down to a 16th, to a 32nd, to a 64th has one flag, or two flags, or three flags, or four flags attached to it. So that makes it pretty simple. A whole rest is pretty heavy, so it just hangs from the line. But a half rest is not so heavy, so it's sort of above the line. It just sort of rests sitting there. Here we have a quarter rest, and similar to our eighth notes, we have an eighth rest that has one curl, a 16th that has two, a 32nd that has three, and a 64th that has four. But just how many beats do each of these notes get? Well, to answer that, we need to look at what those vertical lines are that we see on the score that seem to group the notes into different sections, as in here and here, here and here, and so on, as well as what are those two numbers that are right here, or they sometimes we see a C or a C with a line through it, a vertical line through it. What do those mean that are right beside the clef marking, or actually right beside the key signature? Well, the vertical lines divide our notes into sections which are called bars or measures, and those two numbers, one above the other, that's called our time signature. And like our key signature with the sharps and the flats that tell us about what scale we're in, the time signature tells us what time we actually have to play. So the top note tells us the number of beats that are in each measure, that is number of beats between two vertical lines. And the bottom number tells us which note gets the whole beat. In this case, a quarter note, 1/4. Now, you might be wondering, why is it that there's this one here, one note, we've got two notes here, we've got four notes here, we've got 8 notes here. It just seems to be sort of haphazard. Well, let's give a listen and see how all of this is organized. When we look at a whole note, that whole note represents all the beats in the whole measure. So in 4/4 time, if there are 4 beats in the measure, it actually represents 4 beats. And we can listen to that, counting as the green line, the green vertical bar moves across, how many times it moves across before it moves into the next measure. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, just like our pizza that we had with Emily when she came over, we could take that pizza and we could divide it into 2, so there was half each. Well, we can take that whole note and divide that into 2 half notes, and that's the circle that's empty that has a line to it. Now, if there are 4 beats, then each of those notes has to get 2 beats in 4/4 time. There's the 4 beats there. So 2 plus 2 equals 4. Now, this is going to apply all the way along. As we take half the value of what we have. So a quarter note, if a half note gets 2, we can take that quarter and divide it, that half, and divide that into 2, and we would have 2 quarter notes. Well, if we get a half note gets 2, then a quarter note has to get 1. As we can also order the number of beats in the measure itself. So this note, first half is going to get the first 2 beats, and the second half is going to get the second 2 beats. And again, that applies all the way along. So you can actually count the number of beats as it goes across, and then count the ordering of beats. Let's give that a listen all the way through until we reach the 8th notes. 1, 2, 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 beat, 1, 1, 1, 1, 2, 3, 4 beats. Now, 8th notes pose a little bit of a problem, but that's okay. We've taken our quarter note and divided it into 2. So naturally then, instead of it getting 1 beat, our 8th note gets a half a beat. So a half and a half is 1, and then there's another 1, and there's another 1, and there's another 1. So 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 4. When we count that out, we usually count the first eighth note, and then we count like 1, 2, 3, 4. You'll be able to see that that actually works. But if we put an and in, we can pick up that second note that still keeps the beat. So I'm going to count out the beats here for you, and then we'll do the one and you'll actually see that it sounds exactly the same. The and just sort of makes it easier for us to count. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So we'll end this lesson by looking at two more things. We have the rests, and the rests, as we saw in our original chart, represent the same number of beats. A whole rest in 4/4 time get 4 beats. A half rest is going to get 2 beats. So there's the 2, and there's the 2 that are played for the note. So 1, 2 plus 2 is 4. A quarter rest is going to get 1 beat, just like the quarter note gets 1 beat, because it gets half of that, which gets half of that. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Eighths are the same way. That's a half a beat, and that's a half a beat for the rest. So half plus a half is 1, half plus a half is 1, which is 2, plus another half and a half, which is 3, and a half, which is 4. And then finally, we're going to look at some other ones. This is the C we talked about. That's common time, which is 4/4 time. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now, if you look through your RCM books, you'll find that there are different pieces of music, and sometimes those numbers are different. It's not necessarily 4/4. In this case, we have 2/4, so the quarter note still gets the beat, but instead of there being 4, there are only 2 beats in a measure. Sometimes there are 3 beats in a measure, and the quarter note gets the beat. 1, 2, 3. Sometimes, and here's a half rest and a quarter rest, so 1, 2, 3. Sometimes we have 3 beats in a measure, but it's the eighth note that gets the rest. So, again, we talked about that stem with a flag. Well, the flags sometimes get joined together in what's called a beam. So here are 3/8 notes, 1, 2, and 3, which is the 3 there. And a quarter rest is 2/8 notes, so that's a half plus a half plus a half. So that's 3 right there. 1, 2, 3. And we have 6/8 time. 6 beats in the measure, the eighth note gets the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I should correct this. This is actually 3 beats per measure. The eighth note gets it. So since there are 2/8 in a quarter, that's 1, 2, and that's 3 right there.